you live?
I am live. Well, it hasn't gone on yet. The the door is really dark. I mean, it's really bright. Hello, we're live. And I just shifted. It's always set up production the first minute or two. Still learning on the go. Comment moderation. Let's see. Who do I want to turn on and turn off? Just kidding. Hi, Marla. Hello. I'd like to be able to turn everybody on, even if you're not an Artisan Wine Group follower, or if you're not a me follower. I wish I could see all the comments. But actually, what happens is that people commenting, if they're not greeted in by their friends who are already guests, we can't see their comments. So feel free to always message me or to touch base with me on a private message, and I'll answer any questions that you have. All right. Hi, Leslie. Welcome.
Chucky.
Oh, Chucky's on. How come I don't see him? Exactly what I was just saying. All right. Leslie, I hope it arrived on time. And we're going to talk about cold versus warm versus too chilled for wine as well today. Hi, Mary. Welcome. And Mark Schindlerman, I don't know why I don't see you. We are friends. But I'm happy you're here. Welcome. I'm happy you're all here. So tonight it'll be interesting to see because it's a Thursday night instead of a Friday. So I know for some people that's better, for some people it's not. So we'll see how it goes. I'm happy to move it back to Fridays once winter comes, I think, if people preferred that. Keith's looking at me. Maybe not family. There's Mary.
Top fan, Mary.
Top. I'm trying not to mention it. Hi, Mary, top fan. Leslie, top fan. Anyway, so let's see, we're 3 minutes in. So I just want to give people a couple more minutes to join. But those of you who have your wine, please go ahead and open it up. We're tasting Charbono or Bonarda tonight. And it's kind of an interesting red for the summer. So the more that I learned about it, the more excited I got because there's controversy around it. Bum, bum, bum. So that's exciting. Lots to learn. Hi, Lori. Welcome. All right, I'll give it one more. I know lots of people are traveling and we're recording. And so I know lots of people are going to tune in later on. So I think I'll go ahead and begin. So welcome again. I think I said welcome 16 times. So if that isn't a drinking word, it should be every week. Oh, nice, Leslie. Leslie's already headed into the weekend. So that's pretty awesome. So thank you for joining us. We hope that everybody is happy and healthy and enjoying your summer. It was funny for me last week. It was the first time since COVID, since the pandemic and being locked in, that we didn't have a live wine tasting. And I'm sorry it was so confusing. Those of you who tried to kind of log on, because I said it was going to be at 8, but I didn't realize I said it was going to be at 8. I thought it was going to be a recording. And so it was kind of messy, but it was there for you. And I couldn't read the comments anyway because I was up and had all the ingredients in front of me. So Keith and I kind of we just played and had a lot of sangria. And then I took it kayaking with me, and it was pretty good. So anyway, thank you for those of you who had a chance or tried to log in, and I'm sorry I couldn't catch you. So this month's topics, or the summer topics, the ones that are left, these are all chosen around our summer 6-packs. So if you're having a hard time finding the varietal that's listed, I'm not surprised. I'll try to remember to put an alternative. So there are oftentimes other names for these small varietals. And in fact, I had some contacts today. People reached out and said, I didn't get the tasting pack. I don't have the Charbono. I can't find it anywhere. And in New Hampshire, you can just look on their website and see what they have. So I looked up Bonarda, and they in fact had 2 in stock in Salem and 1 up in Londonderry. So people were able to go and grab them. But keep in mind, if you don't have the wine we're tasting, you can still drink your own wine and learn. And you don't have to drink when you're listening, but it does make it more interesting. And Keith, that's the one you want to set out, the smaller one. Okay. Those of you who are tasting whatever you're tasting tonight, okay, we're going to do a little bit a temperature thing. So if you can grab a second glass. Mine is already chilled because I have the Charbono, and this one is a little bit lighter bodied, so we wanted it to be cooler. And so I poured a second glass that I definitely want to warm up. We want to be able to compare temperature. And so if you have a Bonarda, it's probably warm. Put Pour a second glass and put it in the fridge so you can taste the difference. Okay, so this is one. Some light reds can be drank chilled and it makes them lovely, and they can be fine wines that are chilled. So all right. So all the wineries we work with at Artisan Wine Group, the wine is typically handpicked, small family owned, almost always sustainable, organic, and or biodynamic. And some of it you can't even get in the United States except through us. And what I'm noticing is things like this Charbono, they only have 90 acres. So they have very small case production. They have 255 cases. So we're fortunate enough to be able to offer it. But if you don't offer it, if you don't purchase it in the next couple of weeks, it'll be gone, and not to be replaced until next year. So if you love it, make sure you get yours. And so I typically offer my tasting pack 2 weeks beforehand. And then by that Thursday that we're tasting it, it's up in individual bottles, but they're not going to stay up. So and you can always order a mix pack or a pack of 4 as well. So if there's something that you had, like I know the Gleitzer Bishop, we had that as the Shiraz, that's almost sold out. You won't be able to get that once it's gone. So things like that, they do come and go. So it's not always consistent. And that's what you get with small handpicked varietals. So Marla says she couldn't find Charbono in Connecticut. And so she found a delicious Bonarda. And Bonarda is in fact less expensive, same grape. And she made new friends who sell wine at a great store. That's awesome. That's awesome, Mark. And Leslie said she's drinking bottle 582. So Keith is checking to see what number ours is. But isn't that funny? I love that small, like that they have the numbers. So we are number 252, Leslie. So we were bottled before you. Very cool pickup. I didn't realize. That is really cool. So anybody else who wants to share what bottle number they have, that's really neat. Okay, so if you haven't already, go ahead, open your wine and drink along with us. Charbono should be served slightly chilled, 54 to 57 degrees. But if you have a big Bonarda from Argentina, you can serve it warmer, 58, 59 degrees. Okay, those of you who have the Kivelstadt, I think I already said this, but to do a second glass so you can try warm and cold. And those of you who have any other kind, pour a second glass and see if you can put one in the fridge so you can taste the difference in a little bit. Okay. And when I say chilled, this bottle, mine is actually too cold. I know it is. I didn't have to take the temperature right out of the fridge after being in there for a couple of days. It's going to be, what is our fridge, Keith? Like 50, 45? Yeah, probably. He has no idea. Whatever temperature refrigerator is supposed to be at, that's what it's at. But that's too cold. Okay. So what do you do when you get a wine that's too cold? Because this has happened in restaurants. I've been served some really nice bottles of wine, Ornellaia, Sassicaia, and freezing, and you could feel it. And so what I always do, you use a bulbous glass, meaning it has, an area for you to hold, and you can warm it up with your hands just like that. I know what you're thinking. Don't put it in the microwave. Okay. All right. On days like today, it's not going to take much to warm up anyway. All right. So the glass, you'll notice I have my universal glass, my tulip. I might use this one as well. And for Charbono, you can use either kind. You usually don't use a big red glass because there's a lot of aromatics that you want to head upward, because this is more of a fruity wine, though it is a fine wine. Okay. All right. So a quick toast to everybody. Cheers. Cheers, Keith. Happy Thursday. All right. So the first time I drank this, I pulled it out. I had a friend over, and I pulled it out, and I was surprised. I didn't expect it to be what it was. And it just kept getting better and better and better as we drank it. And my eyes kept getting bigger and bigger. And finally, I'm like, all right, I'm serving this. I try to not do the same winery twice, but man, I love their rosé and I love their Charbono, and we'll talk about why. Cheers. All right. So drinking game of the night. Whenever I say Charbono, I'm going to lose track, but Charbono. In French, it's char. I can't even do it with a straight face. Charbono. This is what the translation sounded like.
The French is translated to Italian.
The French to Italian. It's not. Oh, did that sound Italian? I can't get my translations right, but cheers to everybody. Okay, first thing you're going to notice, it's a big wine. It's bigger than you would expect, and the alcohol is a little bit lower. And so people who don't want that high alcohol wine, this is a great wine if you want substance. So they say people who like Cabernet or Zinfandel, but don't like that the alcohol level is so high, this is a good wine for that. Okay. All right. So who am I? Most of you know, but just in case you're tuning in for the first time, I'm Allison Miller, the owner of Artisan Wine Group. We are training reps to go out and do these wine tastings. And I have my WSET advanced degree from the UK, and I have my master's in education. And I also am the inventor of the Vino wine card game, which will be coming out in a new version in the next few weeks. So thank you for joining us. And we will be getting together every other Thursday night in the summer at 7 p.m. You can join us with whatever glass of wine you have. Okay. Always, when you're drinking my wine, it's food wine. I never serve a wine that's a porch sipping wine unless it's intentional and with a food wine. So it's always good to have, like I have a little cheese plate here. I always just throw something. I happen to have some honey goat cheese from a past tasting. I have some brie, and I have a little bit of meat to try. So this is definitely a food wine. It's going to change as you drink and eat with it. Okay. Remember, we're doing a sensory examination of the wine tonight. So we're thinking about it, not just drinking it, but we're drinking it too, especially when I say Charbono. Someone please fix that. Make it not Italian. So what I want to ask those of you who are joining us is if you could share with us one wonderful memory that you have that reminds you of some good wine. If you feel like sharing it in comments, we would love to hear it. And because I encourage you to do that because wine is very much an experience of the senses and your memories. And so if you're sitting with around, I don't know, the fireplace with a nice glass of wine and some good friends, you're likely to remember that wine if it comes up, along with your memories and your senses that you're experiencing. So if anyone wants to share just a beautiful experience that they remember that they attribute to, or they remember with a wine they were drinking, feel free. Okay. So overall, Charbono, what's up? Hi, Greer. Overall, Charbono is a wine varietal it came from the Etruscans 3,000 years ago, not 23, 3,000 years ago in Italy. They first planted Bonarda in northern Italy in the Piedmont area. And according to some, the grape variety is so ancient that the Romans once called it Carbonica, which is for dark grape. Okay. Thank you, Mary. It came to be well known in France in the Savoie region. It was Italy. It's now part of the French Alps. And you'll see when I show you a picture, it's so far over. It's really in the Alps. It's it's not on some wine maps, but it's definitely high altitude. It's a high altitude area. This varietal is known as Charbono, Bonarda, Carbo, and Douce Noir. Douce Noir is actually, Keith has a joke there somewhere. Douce Noir actually is what is most referred to, and it's probably the most accurate of any of the varietal names because there's a lot of controversy around the DNA and this varietal. So it's now currently mostly planted in Napa or Argentina. If you did get an Italian Bonarda, does anybody have an Italian Bonarda? If you did, it's actually a different wine altogether. So it's genetically different, but it's probably more true to what the Bonarda varietal was genetically. Okay. It's known for being a medium bodied wine, high acidity, berry fruit aromas, and some smoky characteristics. I chose this wine because the small batch wines, these hidden varietals, tend to be winemakers' wine. So winemakers will experiment with their wineries to keep the staff engaged and to keep them excited. And they never know if they might have the next big thing. And so sometimes they'll use new equipment or barrels, or the technique is different. And so you can imagine the opportunity to work with a new vineyard or unknown grape. It's exciting for them. And so they grow them for fun and for interest. And these are honestly like the most, I don't know, geeky kind of cool wines that I've found. They're fine wines. They go with food. They're balanced and they're structured, and they have depth, but they're super cool. So I was at a wine tasting, and I may have shared the story before, but I was sitting next to the winemaker's wife, and she was talking about how they had bought this vineyard in Washington on Red Mountain, and they're making this unbelievable Bordeaux blend. Like their wine is just, and their Pinot Noir, it's just awesome. But she turned to me and she said, "You know what my favorite is? The Tempranillo." They had like this tiny little plot of land right in front of the house, and her husband said, "I'm probably not going to farm that. I'm not really up for it. Is there anything you want there?" And she said, "Well, let's try. Let's see how the Tempranillo does." Unreal, unbelievable. So Tempranillo is a bigger varietal than Bonarda and Charbono, but that's a perfect example of these incredible winemaker varietals that you'll find. And so this is one of them. And this one was identified, the one that we're drinking tonight, by a winemaker because of its heritage and because of the potential and the possibility of Charbono. So it's just, it's exciting. All right. So how do we taste? We do this every week. So if you're new to us, it's see, swirl, sniff, and sip. So first we're going to look for the clarity. Okay. What color might we call this? What do you guys want to call this? Any ideas? Quiet on the comments tonight, ma'am. All right. I'm going to give you a minute. I'm going to give you a minute to come up with a color. Do, 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 do. Plum. Yes. Thank you, Greer. Plum. Yes. Who says blackberry? Oh, Keith says blackberry. Yes, it is a blackberry color. And garnet. Yes, Leslie, it has that garnet. And Marla sees dark plum, maroon, and it's inky. Yeah. Okay. All of those work. I would give it a purple. I would give it, well, I would give it, they call it an electric Kool-Aid color, but it's definitely a deep, inky, dark purple. And the one that we have is definitely a little bit garnet, just a little bit. Okay, very good. All right, so let's, and it's clear, we know that, clear of imperfections. So let's look at the legs. Is it a big wine or is it a small wine? Okay. Not, I mean, it's pretty viscous, but it's not, not a lot of legs. So that means it's going to be medium bodied. It's medium bodied. Those of you with Bonarda, you might have something different. Okay. All right, the aroma. So first we're going to smell it without swirling it. What do we smell? Well, you know, there's not a lot of smell when you first smell it. That means it's not highly aromatic. Okay, so some wines you stick your nose right in there, highly aromatic. This one is not, but they are known to be aromatic. So if we swirl it, we're introducing it to the air, and that's going to bring up a whole bunch of different smells. Okay, so what do you get? What do you guys get? Am I going to sing again? Do, 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 do. All right, Marla's got the smell. She's got brine, the sea, the beach, plums, and sweet floral like violets. Yes, okay, all of those. So the first thing I smell is actually like an earthy, salty smell. And I love how Marla calls it brine. I would definitely call it briny. Olives was mentioned for this one. It's like a salty, briny, that's a perfect example. Greer gets grape jelly. And Greer, I'm wondering if maybe you just pulled yours right out of the fridge. You might get that deep fruit that up front. Okay. And and Chucky says, what is moist for 200? You have one for him, Keith? Charbono for 200. No moist. Oh, that was drink. Okay. So I'm going to swirl again. Yeah, plum. I get black cherry and that deep. What Greer's getting, that grape jelly, is like black cherry deep jelly. Yeah, blueberry. You're definitely gonna get blueberry. I'm definitely gonna get plum. Okay, what? And then some violets. You might get some violets in there, like Marla got. Okay, all of those are true to varietal. And so, Greer, I would say, I could make a comment about you just playing it out, but I'm not going to. I'm going to rise above my dirty mind, and I am going to say, hold it in your hands and warm it up with your hands. Okay, so you may ask, Allison, if it's chilled, why are you going to get the fruit first? Well, you're going to get the fruit first with the chilled because as wine, okay, it's definitely a chemical process that I really can't explain, but as wine warms up, the aromatics are interacting with the air and it lifts the scents and it lifts those under layers and of the wine. And so while Greer tastes it, it's going to warm on her palate and she's going to pick those up. But when you're just smelling, because it's cool, all of those qualities can be masked. Okay. Yeah, great, Marla. The olives. Yes. And that tells you that some wines it may go with if you're smelling and picking up olives. Okay, if it's oaked, which this one is not, Marley, yours might, and some of you, some others of you, yours might be oaked, and it might say it on the back, it might not. You might get smoky notes of cigar, sweet figs, and chocolate. Okay, so all of that can come out in this lovely varietal. All right, now let's taste it. So when we taste, we always taste one and then a second. All right, what are you getting? You get the fruit first. Actually, I'm getting the olive brininess first. It's a sweet, almost earth. Okay. Then what? Then what else are you getting? Okay, first taste, second taste, third taste. Okay. Marla's is unoaked, which is true to the style. It's just as with a lot of varietals, they are starting to try oak to see how it might change, might alter it and make it even more complex and bring out those smoky tastes and that chocolate, cocoa, and toast. All right. So for taste, I want, as I say them, I'd like you to think about, does this taste like black cherry? So Marla got the minerals up front. Yep, great. And that could be acid that you're tasting as well. The acidity, you feel it, but it could bring out some of that minerality. Greer gets the earth. Yep, good. And that it's definitely earthy. And again, because it's chilled, you'll get that earth first. As it warms in your palate, if you hold it in your mouth, you'll start to get additional flavors. Marla's getting cherries, plums, almost like a sour candy. Okay, good, good descriptions. So black cherry, think about it. Can you taste that black fruit, black cherry, plum, but not just plum, but plum sauce would be kind of a deeper, fruitier, sweeter, but bigger mouthfeel for plum. Violet. Okay, so what does violet taste like? If you smell a violet and you can think about what that might translate to on your palate, you might be able to pick that up. And as I said, as it warms on your palate, you're going to pick up some more. Okay, so I get that acidity first, I get that earthiness, and then the black cherry. Okay, and that's what Greer's getting. There's tobacco leaf in there. That's part of that earth. So if you think about what might tobacco leaf taste like, I think of tobacco and what it, I've never chewed tobacco, but what I would imagine it would taste like um, in wine, just a tiny little bit, not to make you sick, right? So fruit, acidity, and it almost tastes like an exotic Merlot. Can you guys get that? Marla says, after the fourth sip, there's a silky, velvety sensation across the middle of my tongue. Yeah. Okay, so Marla's now adding in another dimension. And that's the cool thing about wine. I was thinking about this the other day. So people can be like, when you first meet somebody, that person, you don't know them very well. And you may think, to them, they're almost a single dimension. You meet them, you're introduced, there's not a lot to them. But as you get to know them better, they start to gain dimensions in your mind. And as you have more experiences or more connections, they gain additional dimensions. And before you know it, they're one of your very good friends and even more dimensions, and they can elicit inspiration and joy when you see them. Wine is the same way. I'm actually writing this in my book. Wine is the same way, right? It's as you experience it. At first sip, it's single dimension. As you experience it, fine wine, you start to get more and more and more. And you're thinking about, as funny as it seems or feels to talk about it, as funny as it seems to talk about it and the feeling in your mouth, that's wine. That's it's adding that extra dimension of how it feels in your mouth. Now, I don't want to know about the dimension with people, but with wine, I'm okay with it. Okay, so these can have high tannins, the Charbono,
Tammy.
and oh, hi Tam, welcome. So they can have high tannins, which makes them a good enough wine to cellar. So believe it or not, you can cellar these wines up to 20 years. Okay, this Charbono from Mendocino County, this one, the California, is more of a drink now kind of thing. Sorry, the dog got out. So anyway, all right, and Charbono tends to be 11 and a half to 13 and a half alcohol. That's where they keep it around, and it's good to decant it if you have time, but we were trying to chill it and decant it for mine. Okay. All right. So here's what we're drinking. I'm drinking out of the tasting pack tonight, and please feel free to comment in the comments on the side what you're drinking. Some people have already sent me their labels, which was great. Thank you very much. So this is the Kibblestot. I love their labels too, the Charbono. And it's from Venturi Vineyard, where the rosé that we had was from there too, and it's Mendocino County. So it's up north in California. Okay, so I'm going to show you my maps in my low-tech way. I'm showing Facebook first, then Instagram. So if you see Sonoma here and you see Napa here, up above Sonoma is Mendocino. That's Mendocino County. Alexander Valley is there. Okay, Mendocino County is right here, Napa, Sonoma. And so it's a little cooler, but there's a beautiful vineyard there that they pull from. Okay, so the one that we're drinking, the Kibblestot Cellars Native Son, it's a unique varietal. Charbono. So here's a little bit of history. Now, as we move along, I'm going to come and go with the history because it's really quite a storied wine. It was planted all over California in the beginning of the 20th century. It's mostly been ripped out and grafted over, meaning taking the rootstock and planting other things on it. You could probably guess what they planted on it because it's mostly grown in Napa. So if you want to guess, you can. As Greer is saying, this wine is really smooth versus like a Beaujolais, which is really, really high acid, and especially the ones we get in the States, a Beaujolais Nouveau, they tend to be less smooth. So this one is super smooth. And so what they've planted there, did anybody guess what they've planted over the Charbono? No one's guessed yet. Okay, Marla's commenting on what she's having, which is a La Libres Bonarda Classica from Mendoza, Argentina. Lovely. So what they planted over the Charbono is Cabernet. Cabernet Sauvignon is the cash crop. So they pulled out the Charbono and planted the Cab. Okay, and there's a lot more money there. So there's still a small amount in North Coast. Most of it is actually in Napa, in Calistoga. Okay, and so Kibblestot was able to get a 2-acre block in Mendocino County, and their plan was to make it rare, and it is 255 cases, and very unique in a light and fun way. And they are all about food, wine, and experience. And so as this wine is warming up, you're probably tasting the difference if this is the one you're trying. So good. Oh, see, now it's warming. I'm getting black cherry right away. And then that lovely balanced acidity on the palate. And then the plum. So good. Okay, so bright and balanced, explodes out of the glass, savory aromas, as we talked about, olives, mushrooms, stewed black fruit on the palate. The winery is in Sonoma, actually, but they have access to these vineyards in Mendocino County, where I showed you. The soil here, where these varietals are grown, is gravelly loam soil, so sand, silt, and clay, with a mixture of sandstone, shale, and quartz. And so they're very, very well drained soils, and there were alluvial flows. So under the ground, there were ancient riverbeds, which deposited stones and always will leave different kinds of minerals and qualities. And these vines are 70 years old. So they go very, very, very far down into these these alluvial flows and are finding all of these different characteristics within the soil. And then they bring it up into the grape. And that's where you get such like different, cool, extensive qualities. And they dry farm, and it's certified organic, which a lot of our wines are. Okay. So how do they make it? They use ambient yeast, which is natural yeast that exists, and they malolactic ferment in a barrel. All of the grapes basically go into this open top fermenter. Half are whole cluster, meaning they just take the whole clusters and they put them in stems, and the other half are destemmed and they're thrown on top. And so the whole clusters in the bottom basically get crushed down and released, and they start the regular wine process, right? Normal wine, you put the juice in the barrel, or you punch down, or I'm not thinking of the right word, but you press the grapes, and the juice comes out, and then you ferment it. You may ferment it on the skin, you might not, and you have malolactic fermentation and all of that. And I know I'm blah, blah, blahing right now. Feel free to interrupt. But instead, what they're doing is there's some juice that gets pressed out of the bottom. But when they put in these full grapes, they're introducing naturally CO2, carbon dioxide. And what that does, okay, now here, it took me a really long time to get to the cool thing with Charbono. Drink. Big lead up. What it does is it causes fermentation inside the grape skin. So the juice inside the grapes ferments to about 2% alcohol, and then they burst open. And what that does is that preserves, it gives you extra color, it gives you extra fruit flavor, and it adds a different dimension in terms of the seeds, and some of the flavors from the skin seep in. So it's called carbonic maceration. It's been around for 200 years. Winemakers have been using it. Beaujolais, they extensively use it, but it makes a light, fruity drink now wine. So what Kivelstott did is they did semi-carbonic, where they did some in that way, and then they did some in the traditional way and put them together. Okay. All right. So let's say, and carbonic maceration can add, it's pretty cool. If you've ever tried a wine that is like bright and fruity, and it has like a bubblegum aroma with cinnamon, vanilla, maybe stemmy flavors, that's usually carbonic maceration.
So they blend it, or they carbonic macerate?
They did it all in one vat. So you've got the yeast, the natural yeast in the bottom, and you've got the whole grape clusters, and then they actually added the stemming as well on top. Okay, good question. And then they aged it for 10 months. And this one actually does have neutral French oak, but because it was neutral, we're not really tasting it. There might be a little smokiness, but I'm not getting it. I don't know if those of you who have it are. Okay, so they say for their tasting notes, cherry, blueberry, spice, and forest floor, integrated tannins, definitely, and a great food pairing wine. What's that?
Liz and Greer had a question.
Oh, Liz is here. Hi, Liz, welcome. Oh, I'm not seeing everybody. Greer's question is that method used for both red and white? That's a great question. So I would assume it is, but I can't tell you what white wines it's used for. I know that it's common in Beaujolais. I don't think it's common in white wines, because as I'm searching through all the varietals that I can think of, they do whole cluster fermentation, whole cluster grapes and maceration, but I'd have to check that. Okay, that's a great question. Hi, Liz, now I see you. All right, Keith, do you want to look up what white wines go through carbonic maceration? He's going to have me spell it. All right, so let's go back to where this grape originates. This grape originates in Savoie, France. They don't grow it there now, really, okay? So this is our handy dandy map of France, and I'm gonna show Facebook first and then Instagram, but this tiny little yellow region in the Alps, right near the Swiss border, that's Savoie. We're gonna talk more about it in a couple weeks because we're trying one of their great varietals, Mondouse, really, really good. But I just wanted to show you where Savoie is in the French Alps. Okay, this is Beaujolais here, and the Rhone is down here. So just to give you an idea, okay? So it originated there. So Charbono, or those ampelographers who study grape morphology and varietal characterization, they call it douce noir. Okay, so we're going to drink because we said Charbono. And it used to be one of the most widespread red grape varieties until the 19th century in Savoie. Also, there was quite a bit in Italy, but it was all ripped out in favor of higher priced wines, in favor of varietals that were more in demand. And so we'll talk more about what that means. But it's famous for producing a deeply colored wine. Many thought it was dolcetto, if you've had dolcetto from Italy, because the term means sweet black, and so does dolcetto. But it's actually Douce Noir. It's a late ripening varietal and was used oftentimes for blending because it brings out other varietals blends. Okay, so one really cool fact about it that I just learned is that Prisoner, their early really successful blends, they were using a little bit of Charbono to bring out the qualities in their cabs and their blends. So kind of interesting. It's let's see. I'm just going through Savoie. I said a lot of this, but Charbono was known as Corbeau de Savoie and as um, Douce Noir in Savoie itself. Okay, so yeah,
It looks like there's a couple of whites that were.
can you name a couple?
Um, Minimus,
Okay.
number 11, Minimus
Okay.
white.
So just so I can explain to you, I asked Keith to look up the white varietals because Greer had a great question. Do they do this often with whites? And what Keith found is they do, because I really haven't learned about carbonic maceration with whites. And so fine white wines, no. But Keith did look it up, and there are a few like small varietals that I've never heard of, Minimus and something number 12 or something like that. So so overall, I would say no, not general practice.
But, I mean, most of them say that it's a practice for red wines.
Yep.
But
Thank you. All right. Cheers to Keith for his assist. All right. So it's predominantly grown in California or Argentina, mostly in Napa, but now San Diego and Lodi are picking up on it as well. And it's oftentimes oaked in neutral oak barrels if it is aged, and then aged in the barrel. Okay. There's only about 17 wineries all in California that do small, oh, hi, Andrew, that do small productions of Charbono. And Gianni Buonomo Vintners in San Diego is one of them. And I mentioned them because they run a Charbono festival, believe it or not, once a year. So, but most are in Napa. So the reason that they're grown mostly in Napa is because it has the best conditions for its growth. So the Charbono grown in this region is well concentrated, and it makes the best wine blends as well. So I keep going back and forth between Charbono and Bonarda, and I think I need to be clearer on what that means. So it's the same grape varietal that was taken from Douce Noir in Savoie, and it was brought over to Argentina. It was brought over in cuttings to California. In California, they actually thought it was Barbera, as often happens, mistaken varietals. And then years later, and I'll cover this in a little bit, they realized it was a different varietal and they named it, or they started calling it Charbono. They think from Corbeau, dark grape, from that area, from that name. The same token, it was brought over to Argentina and they started calling it Bonarda. And so it's the same varietal. In Argentina, it's Bonarda. In California, it's Charbono. Cheers, cheers, cheers. In France, it's Douce Noir, or it could be Corbeau de Savoie. And in Italy, it doesn't really exist. Okay, so the Bonarda, I'm going to talk about the Bonarda in Italy, but it doesn't really exist. It's not actually the same varietal as these two. Okay, so Napa, grows in Napa really well because their soils are prime soils because of the volcanic activity from thousands of years ago, and this is a really tough grape varietal. The weather in Napa is optimal for the wine minimal temperature differences between day and night. For this grape, it's really important that temperature maintains itself for high acidity. And it's also a really, really late harvesting grape, right? So it doesn't develop up until the very end. And so it needs some care. It's usually one of the last varieties to be harvested to fully ripen. Okay, and it's notable for its high acid, but when yields are kept low, it can have a rich fruit complexity, structured tannins, and some sweet notes of spice. Okay, so everything that I'm telling you about the temperamental constraints of this grape make it expensive to make and grow, and it has to, it has to be then bottle aged for excellence. And so, like this, I can't remember the price point on this Charbono, but they ranged, I think, anywhere from 20 to 70. The Bonarda, because Mendoza has like perfect desert quality with tons of irrigation, it does really well in Argentina, and so they're less expensive. They range between 10 and 30. Okay, so that's kind of just an overall, but it does do really well in Napa. So California Charbono wines can usually benefit, I said that 20 years of aging. It's a really great blending wine. So what they used to do is if your Cabernet veered off, you're making it at what didn't taste great, they might add in 2% Charbono to bring out the fruit qualities of the Cabernet Sauvignon. So a famed winemaker said that the ability at the smallest levels to act as a sort of catalyst for unlocking of the fruit expression of other varieties. It's almost like a Venice MSG, okay, but healthier. Right. So as I mentioned, it was one of the secret sauce in the early vintages of Prisoner, and then it got too successful. Oh, it was with Zin, Prisoner with Zin, and it got too successful. And so they couldn't keep putting in the Charbono because there's not a lot. There's only 90 acres in California. So um, in 2010, a wine writer described Charbono as the Rodney Dangerfield of red wine because it doesn't get any respect. Okay. So basically, Cab and Chardonnay have taken over. So here's the history in California. All right, let me just check the time. Yeah. All right, the history in California. So they're not fully sure of the exact story, but it's believed it was brought over by the Italians and they called it Barbera, as I mentioned, in the late 1800s. It wasn't until 1938 that a UC Davis geneticist realized that the Barbera was actually, there were these Inglenook wines, which I'm sure you've heard of that vineyard, Inglenook, and they kept winning all these awards for their Barbera. Well, it was actually Charbono. Cheers. And so people kind of went crazy over Charbono. And so it was huge in the 40s. It was huge all the way through until the 70s. Then Francis Ford Coppola bought Inglenook in 1975 with the proceeds from The Godfather. And he proceeded to rip out all the Charbono and plant Cabernet Sauvignon, as you can imagine. And so there were growers that were working with them, and they kept their Charbono going, but then they slowly let it go because Inglenook stopped producing it. All right. So now it's mostly planted in Calistoga in the Up Valley area because there's great heat there, and it provides a long growing season. And Charbono does really well in Calistoga. Okay, I said Charbono like 18,000 times. So you guys, cheers. And so it does really well there. There was every year after Inglenook was purchased up until 1980, there was a winery, a Charbono society that would meet, and they would share the fine Charbono with food. And then they stopped after 1980, but they just revived it. So it's kind of, winemakers would like it to make a comeback because it is such an interesting wine. It makes a beautiful and complex wine. And its existence, which I know Marla will like, its existence represents a resistance to the Cabernet monoculture. So what happens is oftentimes there are these varietals that just grab the public and just shake them, and the public starts spending tons of money. So the market focuses on, and they'll pay a lot of money. And so people were paying a lot of money for Cabernet Sauvignon. Some of it's the marketing, and some of it really is the quality. And Napa, unfortunately, Charbono grows, cheers, best where Cabernet Sauvignon grows best. So so it's interesting because it's a good Charbono is a good grape to withstand climate change, and it doesn't get too sugary, and it does well in the autumn. So it's really kind of a promising varietal. All right, I'm laughing at Marla's. She's been tasting along, drinking along, toasting along right with us. Um, so now it's been defined as like a living catalog of delicious and distinctive foods facing extinction. They mentioned Charbono drink. So basically, if you take the big cash crop of Cabernet Sauvignon, it has 21,600 plus vineyards or acres in Napa, where there's only 90 of Charbono. Okay, so I can tell you, I have a list of places that sells it. It's a very short list, and I won't name them off, but I can put them up after. They liken the colors, the current vintages, they liken them to almost like a petite Syrah with the blueberry and blackberry, and then that kind of earthiness. Okay. Oh, it looks like Christine is on because Liz mentioned her. Oh yeah, she is. Oh, better late than never. Christine, how are you? Thanks, Liz, for giving a demerit. You definitely get that. Um, so there also is a Charbono Fest, as I mentioned before, in San Diego once a year, and they taste Barbera versus Charbono. So now the difference between California and Argentina is that the California Charbonos tend to be more polished or balanced than the Argentinian Bonarda. Okay, so cheers to California. All right, moving on. Argentina. All right, and we're moving very slowly today, it seems like. Mendoza is the main region in Argentina. And Argentina, all the vineyards are along the foothills of the Andes. The Andes, it's such a great area to grow wines because it's semi-desert, so it's very, very hot. So in the summer, it's like 104, and then at night it'll be 50 degrees. So there's a huge diurnal shift, a huge shift in temperature, which can preserve the acidity of the wines. And I know I said before in Napa that it was consistent, but they're not, Bonarda is grown in a lot of different places in the Andes. In general, I think the diurnal shift is good, but maybe not for Bonarda. But the Andes Mountains provides a lot of irrigation, natural irrigation as the snow melts. So they get natural irrigation systems throughout the foothills to the valleys. So that's kind of, it's a great place for wine. Okay, and I'm showing the map first to Facebook. I don't know if you can see this, but Mendoza is the primary area here. But if you look, this is the wine map of Argentina. If you look at it, and I know you can't see this small, but almost every single region grows Bonarda. It's the second biggest crop in Argentina. Okay, so it's definitely around. Bonarda is second only Bonarda is second only to Malbec in Argentina. It used to be used mainly to make fruity, medium-bodied bulk wines with low tannins, with early consumption in mind. But they're starting to realize because they were growing big yields, and at one point they had like a really big hailstorm, and there was one place that talks about how they lost half their crops. And then when they harvested the Bonarda, they found that the grape quality was so much better. So they realized that if they wait and they prune and they grow half the crop, yet again, more expensive to make when you're starting to do that. But they found that the grapes had amazing concentration and structure, and they made this beautiful wine with gentle texture and lingering flavors. And it's interesting because a lot of you guys pulled out that texture. Okay, so they're starting to look more seriously, and you're going to hear, I think you'll hear more about Bonarda and more about Charbono if you hadn't before. They're being more careful with site selection, being more careful with winemaking, and you've learned a lot about winemaking is really creating the art around it. And you're getting red cherry, plum, chocolate, mint, and a bright, fresh acidity. Okay, so Marla is finding the Malbec Bonarda blend. Yes, they oftentimes will blend what grows together. Um, California is doing some blends. Argentina, absolutely. Andy says they pelt it with hail every year, so that it produces the smaller yield. But yes, Marla, that's a good call out. And those blends, I'm sure, because the Bonarda brings out the taste qualities of the other varietals, I'm sure that's fantastic. Okay, now to Italian Bonarda. So the actual true Bonarda grapes, there's 6 Italian grape varietals, and the most well known of them is Bonarda Piemontes. It's the only true Bonarda. Those are the only true Bonardas. They're slightly fizzy red, and they're labeled Bonarda, but they're actually made with Croatina grapes. So that's some of them. Some winemakers in Piedmont they use the. So I guess what I'm saying is, if you find an Italian Bonarda, it can be made of a lot of different things. It can be Croatina grapes. It can be Uva Rara grapes. And before phylloxera, it covered 30% of the Piemonte's vineyards, but now not so much. Okay. So food matches. All right. I've mentioned several times, it's a fantastic wine for food. And so I'm going to go ahead and taste my wine. And did yours warm up? Those of you who put a glass of their Bonarda or their Charbono into the fridge to keep it cold. Wow, Keith, we really finished that one. When Keith and I usually do these, we don't finish our wines. This one's like gone. It really is lovely. Very, very different. Okay. And so now I tasted, I still get a lot of black cherry. All right. So now I'm going to my brie. Tell us what you tasted yours with and how it was. Andy had his with hail. Oh, okay. So my guess was, because of the acidity, I'm wondering if the girls are streaming because it's slow again. Yeah, please. So so I tried it with the brie. So if there's a lot of acidity and you have a creamy cheese, the acidity cuts through the cheese and it lifts the taste qualities. Okay. And we keep talking about taste qualities, but food pairing. So go see what you have that might be like a creamy cheese. Even if you have nothing and you have cream cheese, take a little bite and try it. Okay. Marla had hers with cheeseburgers. Sounds fantastic. Yep. And we had barbecue tonight. I'm going to try a little with the barbecue. I'm guessing it's going to add a little mushroom. Yeah. Okay. So it ended up the barbecue that I had didn't have sauce, and I wish it did, because I think a brown sauce on that would be really, really good. What that I think it's pulled pork. What it did is it lifted the cherry, almost like a sweet cherry, a sweet plum. So I didn't like it as much. Now I'll try it with the goat cheese. Oh my gosh, so good. Okay, so the two creamy cheeses I had with it, it was fantastic. So those of you who haven't done your food pairings yet, maybe you haven't eaten, or you have some extra Charbono, cheers, or your Bonarda left, try it tomorrow with food, because it really does change it. Okay, so they list out, and when I say they, a lot of different places put menus that go with their varietals, because you don't find these very often. Oftentimes, if a restaurant can get a Charbono, by the way, they'll get it because it's so different. They'll try to hold it on their menu because it's such a different kind of wine and it goes with a lot of food. Leslie said very enjoyable, went with Colby. Yeah, I bet. Yeah, it just changes it so nicely. So hickory smoked beef brisket, cheeseburger with bacon, black pudding, chicken, beef, pork, and even more steak like fish, like grilled salmon. I was just thinking grilled salmon would be incredible with this. Oftentimes, when I want a red with grilled salmon, I do a Pinot Noir. What's that?
Yeah.
Oh, where's Leanne? I don't see her. Welcome, Leanne. Keith sees you first. So definitely, I almost want to get another bottle just to have it with the salmon, because I think I often do Pinot Noir with salmon and it just elevates both the Pinot Noir and the food. Okay, Leslie, you're gonna have to tell us what this Asadero cheese is. Asadero cheese. Because of its subtle brown spice flavors in the Charbono, it also goes well with flavors from the South Pacific. So pineapple, mango, teriyaki, etc. Okay, so it's kind of an interesting wine that goes with a lot of different things. Now, why did I have you chill it? So when I first drank it, I really enjoyed it slightly chilled. As I mentioned, I think I chilled mine too much. I didn't take the temperature. It was too chilled. So now it's slightly chilled and I'm getting a lovely taste quality. Is anyone's warm? And if it is, Leanne, I'm so glad that you made it. If it is slightly warm, go ahead and try it and see if you can tell a difference between the warmer one and the colder one. It's going to open up a little bit more. And that's why it's hard to get that slight chill. Um, I don't know, Andy. I thought black pudding. I'm thinking black pudding is like bone marrow or something, intestines. I don't know. When I was a high school teacher, one of my students from Ireland brought me in black pudding. And it was, yeah, I'm pretty sure it was definitely some kind of organ
Did you get him arrested?
or intestine. It might have been intestine. No, it was part of he was presenting about Ireland. Haggis. It might have been haggis. I don't remember. Oh, it was not haggis. Charbono. Cheers to everybody. All right. Leslie got a snack pack. Oh, from Sargento. Yeah, okay. Yeah, so that's a great call out. So the pepper jack, um, oh, Leanne says also called blood pudding. Haggis is blood pudding. Can you confirm that for us, Leanne? Leslie, the pepper jack, that's interesting. So the pepper jack, if you think about the spices, they're going to play on your tongue. And that pepper with the acidity together, they almost aggravate rather than go together and complement each other. So if you follow that, you try the pepper jack, you don't like it, then go back to a creamy cheese, even the Colby, that will coat your taste buds. So that'll make it better. All right. Have you guys had any other varietals that you can share that are ones that aren't maybe as prevalent as Cabernet Sauvignon and Chardonnay? We have a Mongoose coming up. We have in the tasting pack Chenin Blanc. We're going to taste two Chenin Blancs in 2 weeks. One New World, one Old World. Okay. Anything else that you guys can think of? And Liz, that was by your inspiration, that Chenin Blanc. Any other varietals you've ever had? I mentioned Tempranillo, but that's becoming more mainstream. Okay. And Marla says that chilling it took away the range of flavors. Yeah, absolutely. And so she prefers it at room temperature, just not hot, but room temperature. Remember that years ago, room temperature, 100 years ago, room temperature was cooler than what it is now. So you can see I'm sitting in 70 probably, but it was cooler. It was more like 60s. So yay, Liz, Chenin Blanc. And so there are a whole bunch of kind of new varietals, and we've talked about this before, but because of the climate change, they're trying new varietals. And I guess I didn't get on my kind of high horse on Charbono. The reason they want to bring it back is because it's one of the few varietals that is true to California and Americanism in the way it was made and developed. And it can be elegant. It can be a fine wine with extensive structure and texture and flavor, and it can age. And an aged Charbono brings out even more smoky qualities and beautiful fruits to it. 20 years, cheers. 20 years it can age. So there's a lot of possibility in it. But as you saw, the winemaking is extensive. The 20 years of aging takes a while. It's a later harvested wine. So, and there's a lot of hand making, right? Hand kind of care going into it. So all of that makes it more expensive. Now, Argentina, the economy is different. Their growing areas are different. They are making it less expensive. However, you will find that the better handcrafted Bonarda is more expensive. And that's because of all the care that's going into the vineyard. So the cool thing about the Kivelstat that I really love, just checking the time, the cool thing about the Kivelstat is that it can be a sipping wine, or you can serve any appetizer with it. And it's red, which I love red. Rather than in the summer thinking of whites, I love to find some good summer reds. So anyway, thank you very much for joining us. I know that we all have lots going on in our lives, and hopefully this is an hour of your time where you can take some time and relax and enjoy yourself, and join us when you can and watch the recordings when you can. And thank you so much. And thanks to all of you commenting. And Leslie, I'm so glad to introduce you to all these different varietals. It's my pleasure. So cheers to everybody. Artisanwinetasting.com is the website, and have a great couple of weeks. Stay safe.